Welcome back. Now let's get into this market picture then. It certainly has gotten quite interesting. It's a bit of a mixed bag across the world really at this point in time. So mixed trading out in Asia then. We're getting conflicting reports out on that front. It seems that China has agreed with the United States with regards to that trade deal then, that perhaps they should indeed extend it for as much as possible, extending the implementation there is of that trade deal then as well. The United States on the other hand also asking itself the question whether they want to even continue with it as it currently stands. At the same time, TikTok has decided to soothe Donald Trump's U.S. administration then for the inability to do business in the United States then as well. So that is certainly going to shake things up a little bit when it comes to that trade war with regards to China and the United States. So a mixed board across that Asian market then. The Nikkei going up 1.33%, so a better picture there. But that negativity hasn't affected things out in Europe though. So we're seeing positivity with the FTSE 100 going up 0.25%. The CAC 40 is 0.8% to the good as well. 0.2% better off as well for the DAX in Germany. So a good mixture of numbers as they head higher on the European front. But unfortunately, that's not a sentiment shared on the local front though. We're down 0.5% at 56,306 points today. The biggest losers seem to be the platinum and gold miners, which have gone down more than 1% each. In fact, platinum is nearly 3% weaker, which means that the resources themselves overall have gone down 1.25%, as you can tell from that figure. Financials also 0.25% down there. Some interesting news coming out with regards to the financials, that Nedbank space as well then, meaning that the CFO there, Raisibe Murati, has decided to resign as CFO, the Chief Financial Officer of Nedbank, and has moved into the same role, but this time at Vodacom, and she'll be Group Chief Financial Officer there. So hopefully we can get some insights on that one. The industrials also ticking slightly lower, while the banks, however, overall did manage to tick up 0.2%. Interestingly enough, though, when it comes to the actual data of the stocks themselves that have gone higher today, City Lodge, Lewis, and Marion Roberts are seemingly the high bidders today. The fallers, though, happen to be Telkom. That's gone down 5.2%. Impala Platinum 4.4%, 4.2% down then as well for Northern Platinum across this trading day. Onto the commodities board then. Marginal gains then as well for that oil price, which continues to sit well above that $45 barrel mark there. It's 0.75% to the good. Platinum is 1.5% stronger, $929 a fine ounce there. Whether it will get to 1,000 this year, though, is going to depend a lot on that demand. Catalytic converters, perhaps the demand for that not being as high as one would have thought as well then, considering that, of course, electric vehicles have started to come into the fore, so perhaps not needing it as much there. Slightly down for that gold price, $1,930 a fine ounce. Strength, though, for the local currency then as well, 16 Rand 78 against the US dollar. The euros at 19.85. A pound will cost you 22 Rand and 5 cents. All right. Let's unpack this market picture a little bit more then. Chantel Marks from FNB Wealth and Investment joins us on Skype then it is. Chantel, thank you so much for the time. So interestingly enough, and I think I want to get right into this one really, the Nedbank CFO, who's been there now for 11 years, has decided to resign and will start basically next month as CFO of Vodacom. How abrupt is that news for the market a day before Nedbank releases their financial results as well?
So I think thankfully Nedbank has quite a bit of institutional knowledge, and the office of the CFO is exceptionally well staffed, and I believe that her successor has already been announced. But I think we're going to see a lot more movement in South African boardrooms. There are a lot of CEOs and CFOs opting to retire this year, or perhaps thinking about moving on next year. So competition at the C-suite, I think, is going to be heating up. I think it's quite interesting to move from a bank to a telecommunications operator. I think in the current environment, probably a much simpler space to be in.
Yeah, it gets very interesting then. I mean, one would have hoped that for a bank as big as Nedbank, that you'd certainly get a black female CEO at some stage to indeed take over the reins from Mike Brown. It's not to be. Instead, they've also put in another CFO who is now a white male as well. So it doesn't do much really for transformation amidst the upper echelon of CEOs on JSE listed companies, does it?
No, not at all. And I think it's unfortunate because the pool of very good female talent or female talent at that level is very small in South Africa, unfortunately, still, particularly when it comes to black female talent in that pool. And I think that that's definitely an issue that we'll have to address, because why is there not someone else to step into that role and to maintain diversity? And I think that you'll probably see something similar across most of the listed companies in South Africa currently.
Yeah, we get to chat to the man in charge at, I think it's personal business banking there and private banking. That's Ciko Thomas tomorrow with regards to the earnings, and hopefully we'll get some insights as well from him. And he's a man who's also got some institutional knowledge when it comes to Nedbank's operations. All right, let's talk numbers then as well. The likes of Imperial coming out with their numbers. It's been very tough for the logistics and even the industrial companies, and Imperial shedding the same light.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that they guided for this set of numbers very well. So you wouldn't have seen a massive response to this result specifically today. The big response would have been when they put out their trading statement. And what you can see at the moment is that the top line really is under pressure. Even while they were able to operate through most of the lockdown, they still took a hit. And when you look at new business, it seems as if they're writing new business at much lower margins. And that just means that the competition within logistics is exceptionally high at the moment. So they're taking a lot of pressure in terms of their margin. And it's probably going to be a similar story going forward. I think that this company is a very well-run company. They've cleaned up the portfolio quite nicely. And what works in their favor is the fact that they have very low levels of debt. But as I say, unfortunately, I think margin is going to be generally hard to come by across the industrial space.
Do you find that we're perhaps just looking for any piece of joy at this time? And are investors going to find any? Not so long ago, we did see the market peter off quite a bit with the coronavirus coming into play. Then have things actually come back? Have investors perhaps found themselves with, stocks that are perhaps a little too expensive at this time? Or are there still a whole lot of cheap, well-diversified stocks out there?
I honestly think there's a lot of opportunity in the mid and smaller cap space in South Africa, particularly among the industrials. If you just look at some of these order books that we are seeing coming through from the construction sector, you might think the construction sector is completely ruined, but the fact is that many of the companies in that space went bankrupt, which means you have very few companies that can actually take on big projects, and big projects are starting to filter through, particularly from government's infrastructure drive perspective. We also had Master Drilling out this morning with a massive order book and huge revenue pipeline, because they've got proprietary knowledge in terms of drilling massive holes for mining, not only in South Africa but also in South America. So there definitely are opportunities. I think it's just a little bit less obvious now, and you'll have to scratch around in order to find them.
So 1 month we sit above 17 Rand against the US dollar. The next we get to 1677 odd. Do we stay? Do we leave? Where exactly is the fair point for the Rand at this time?
So I think that over the long term, so over the next couple of years or so, the Rand should settle around about these levels, or between around about 16 Rand 50 if you look at its fair value. The problem just with the Rand is it is so impacted by sentiment, particularly towards emerging markets, which can be quite volatile from a geopolitical and news flow perspective. So unfortunately, it's so difficult to tell, because if tanks are raging through the streets of Istanbul, the Rand gets hammered for that. And on the flip side, a trade deal gets closer between the US and China, and the Rand strengthens on the back of that. So it's very difficult to say, but I'd say at the moment, the Rand is probably around fair value levels.
Yeah. Very quickly then, let's touch on that oil story as well. It gets interesting. The Gulf of Mexico gets hit by, I think it's Tropical Storm Marco and Laura as well then. And you get the Caribbean also getting affected, but the Gulf of Mexico is where that oil region is. Is that going to impact things quite severely over the next couple of months?
So it could have result in upward pressure on the oil price because of the supply of oil being disrupted. And if you actually see a meaningful pickup in economic activity, that increase in the oil price could be more pronounced. So definitely a perfect storm on the upside or on the higher side for oil at the moment, as opposed to where we were 5 or 6 months ago.
Yeah. Chantel, always good chatting to you as well. Thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it. FNB Wealth and Investments, Chantel Marks there, giving us the latest when it comes to this market and its craziness, of course. Things go up, things go down, things go sideways, and in weird ways as well. That's what we're here to do, helping you unpack all of it. We're going to give you more news.